Welcome to the podcast. This show is entirely dedicated to the wisdom and the stories of people embracing their true and extraordinary nature, of overcoming, breaking through limits, tapping into universal wisdom, and hopefully inspiring you to do the same. Okay, welcome back to Being Extraordinary. This is the first podcast that I am recording in 2026. We had one drop like a month ago now, and it was the first episode of 2026, but we actually recorded it in 2025. So this is my first recorded podcast of 2026, and ironically, it is on the day of the Lunar New Year. So I'm recording this the first day that the Year of the Horse is gracing us with its presence, and I think that's not a coincidence. I have this one lofty ambition, and it's lofty for me throughout 2026, and it is to gain consistency in my work, and with particular focus towards this podcast and other little things in my life that end up falling off the wagon because I am pulled in so many different directions with my work. And I'm not off to a great start. Because I already have not had the consistency of this podcast that I desire to have, but we finally crossed the threshold of the Lunar New Year and let it bring forth new energy to my life to all of our lives, so that whatever goals we've set for ourselves or visions or things we just want to fine tune in our life, let the energy now be there to do so. I don't hope. This year will be interesting for this podcast because if I actually keep it stable and consistent the way that I dream of it to be, I will release more episodes this year alone than the past, 3 years combined, which is very exciting. And something that really matters to me is I know I have a lot of information about a lot of things. And this is just a place where I can disseminate that information and hopefully inspire you again to choose to break free of your karmic patterns, your ancestral inheritance, all these things, and become more free. That is really what my work stands on. And I'm really kind of refining that vision. So be prepared for maybe little tweaks in the podcast. Anyway, on to today's topic. I'm still classically avoiding things that are more taboo, but if I'm releasing this many episodes in a year, I'm going to have to get there eventually. So we are starting gentle today. But something that has come up a lot in my work lately and is very relevant for the Year of the Fire Horse, which I'll just touch on briefly, is about how do we actually make progress or momentum and succeed, quote unquote, with things that we're trying to achieve. So I am going to speak about it from my observations with clients I've worked with, maybe colleagues, maybe my own self, and things I've had to uncover along the way that have essentially contributed to my failure or giving up on yourself or self-sabotage. So the lens that I'm taking, because I'm going to share these points with you based on my observation and my own life experience, it does kind of pertain to people who are, let's say, trying to launch a business or trying to launch a social media account or launch their own podcast or what have you. That's where the observations are coming from, because that's my world, right? I'm working with myself in that capacity. I have colleagues in that capacity. And then obviously I have clients who are also striving towards that journey of self-empowerment, to work for themselves, to share their gifts on the greater stage of life. And that's the lens that I'll be taking, and that's where my observations are coming from. But I made a list of things that I have seen and I've experienced. I do believe this list pertains to all goals and all ambitions in life, whether you are trying to call in a aligned relationship, whether you're trying to set boundaries in relationships that already exist, whether you're trying to travel more, make more money, whether you are trying to pay off debt, whether you're trying to get healthy, go to the gym, whatever it is, whatever your sort of goals and ambitions might be. And then, of course, I'm not just going to talk about all the ways that we fail. I'm going to talk about remedies for those. But something to note as well, before I even get into the list, is that everything exists on a spectrum. So usually the opposite end of the spectrum becomes what the medicine is. So for example, if I tell you that one of the areas that people fail at when they're looking at their goals or ambitions or progress is that you want things to be perfect before you launch it. Well, you can just immediately and already assume that one of the remedies to that is being okay with putting something out into the world before it's perfect, before it's refined, and allowing the feedback, allowing the experience to fill in that other that process of refinement. So you just do the opposite. But I also have some tangible things to share with you also. And just as everything that is divine, I feel this podcast is really coming out at the perfect time, especially because we are shifting from some major closing cycles that have happened for us in the last year. And we're really shifting into something completely different. The energy is completely different right now. So let me just set you up with the energy shift and why this is coming at such a great time. Where we're coming from versus where we're going as a collective is just generally different. And if you can't tell that based upon the changes that have been happening in our reality, our political atmosphere, it's just obvious, even if you're not spiritual or reading the energies. So what's really happening? First of all, I'm not going to speak about the astrological changes because I'm currently going through a personal pivot in the way that I read the energies. And I'm really moving from what we would look at as like pop astrology, tropical astrology, whole sign housing. I'm really moving from that. And I'm actually looking at more of the actual sky. Because I don't know if you guys know this, but the most common version of Western astrology is based on the equinoxes and solstices. So it's not these changing of planets and energies. Even your birth sign is more of a average. It's averaged out and everything's put into these neat boxes where every sign lasts about 30 days, 30 degrees, and it's not an actual representation of the planets moving in our solar system. I do believe that no matter which lens you take with astrology, you can discern truth out of it. There's just, if you know it well enough, you find the same stories end up playing out no matter what lens you take. But it does change things a little bit when we're looking at progressions, when we're looking at the energies. So I haven't played around with it long enough to really give you any insight, but I'm experimenting and observing. So I'm not going to talk about astrology for that reason, because I'm kind of shifting out of one perspective and researching another perspective. And with the shift, I just don't have enough time and information to weigh in at this point. Anyways, so what I am going to talk about is the numerology and the energy of the Chinese version of astrology, the version of the zodiac. So in 2025, this was a collective numerology year 9. And if you know anything about numerology, it only goes from 1 to 9. Sort of. It just sticks with the single digits. So every 9 years is the end of an era, is the end of a karmic cycle. And 2025 was a year 9, which means it was the end of a karmic cycle. And year 9s are really fascinating in of themselves. Just imagine there's this saga of your life that you're participating in. Well, when you hit a year 9, the final wrapping up of this saga, and just think about any book, any movie, there's sort of this big buildup. Then there's this kind of climactic event, the climax of the story. And then there's this really quick, short tapering off. It just happens like really quick. We tie up the loose ends and we shut it down. Well, this is really what a year 9 feels like. It feels like everything's going great. We're hitting this peak experience. And then all of a sudden, everything wraps itself up very quickly, whether you're ready for it or not. Some people welcome this ending, welcome this closure. They're finally ready to let that story go, move on. And for other people, it's like the carpet gets ripped out. You feel like you're just not really in control of your life. Everything happens very quickly. So there was a lot of change that's taking place over that 2025 year, where there may have been things that have ended, things you let go of, beliefs, visions for yourself, ideas, dreams. You really let a lot of stuff go. And the point of letting things go is that they're things that were never meant for you anyway. They weren't aligned. And usually it's so something greater and more aligned can come forward. But a lot of endings certainly did happen, and maybe even filtered a little bit over into the year of 2026, because the lunar new year is different. It's based on the lunar calendar. And the Chinese zodiac that we were in addition to this 9 year, was a year of the snake. Was it the wood snake? I don't think that wood's super important right now. But the year of the snake. And the year of the snake is very healing. It's very kind of mystical, but also what is the snake known to do? To shed its skin. So it is a year of really shedding skin, of really letting go and kind of letting the old sift away and letting the new come forward. But the interesting thing about the snake energy is it does come with a lot of the snake energy, and the year 9 comes with a lot of surrender. It feels like the change is happening to you, that you didn't ask for it, that you can't keep up with it. And it's these revelations and letting goes and revelations and letting goes that you didn't expect. And so when you stack the year 9 on top of the snake, it was just a year of closure and letting go, of endings. And even if you didn't experience anything really obvious, maybe you didn't experience a job loss or a relationship ending, maybe it wasn't something obvious, but there's probably some deep-seated beliefs that maybe came to the surface that you finally had to process, or letting go of a certain dream or a certain belief that you've been carrying and letting operate in the background. It would have came into your awareness and you would have been dealing with letting go of it. So take a moment to reflect on that. And then, because the calendar new year doesn't exactly align with the astrological new year, doesn't align with the lunar new year, so there could have been some carryover surrender, some carryover endings that happened between 2026 and probably right now, which is, if anyone's listening to this later, it's February 17th of 2026. But again, nothing's always exact. And then we're definitely shifting energies now. The fire horse has arrived, and I'll tell you about the fire horse in a moment. But it's a totally, totally, totally different energy than where we're coming from. So there's going to be a shift in energy. And if you've even felt like, oh, things feel different, I feel like there's something big coming, I feel like I need to pay attention to this, or, I just hear a lot of people saying, I feel something big is coming. This is probably what you're sensing, is the fire horse. And then we're in a numerology year 1, which is the completely new storyline, a completely new journey, right? We just wrapped up a saga. Well, now we're like starting the next saga, where what happens at the beginning of a book, right? We're doing character development. We're saying, well, who am I now? And we do this kind of research, just thinking about the hero's journey. We feel incapable, we feel not special, we feel just like a regular person. And all of a sudden it's like, well, who am I? What are my interests? What clothes do I want to wear? What journeys or adventures do I want to go on? Who are my friends now? What is my story now? So there's this little bit of like foundation building that's going to take place over the next few years. But in particular, this year is going to be about you. This year is going to be about, who are you now? What are your dreams now? What's going to drive you moving forward if it's not those limiting beliefs, or that job didn't pan out, or that dream is no longer aligned, or you get it. So who are you now if that's who you're not? Who are you? And so there's a lot of character development. And it should be exciting in a way. It's not this depressing, hard-earned thing. The adventure's begun. Now choose your character, right? Who are you? But you can't just choose for fun. You have to choose who you really are. That's the point of Earth, is to reveal your individuality and live in this expressed way. Express our godliness, right? Because we get to create a life that affirms our truth, that affirms our spirit, which is really what the creator has done, really what God has done, really what divine source is. It's a creator. We are created in our God's image, our creator's image. So we too create. But to create, we need to unlock our authenticity. Who are we? We can't just create for the sake of creating. It has to be to create our truth. And so as we shed layers, as we redefine our character, it's always us revealing more of our truth, more of who we really are, and less of who we never were anyway. So it's fun. It should be fun. This is a fun energy. It's a massive leap from where we are, or where we were, to where we are now. So that can be a little jarring, but for the most part, it's meant to be this nice movement. And then the fire horse, I have to tell you, I'm a horse. I was born under the year of the horse. So I'm extra excited about this year, but also a little bit nervous, because I do believe that in Chinese astrology, when you revisit the year that is you, it's definitely a more potent year, but that can be for better or for worse. So if you're not careful, it could be a very difficult or challenging year. But if you're more aligned, you can make it a really great year. Anyways, the year of the horse. The horse really represents movement and freedom. The horse's genuine greatest goal, greatest desire is to run free. And we have the element of fire fueling the horse this year. And the fire in Chinese astrology, or Chinese medicine even, is really the heart. It's the combustion center where we we vitalize passion and desire and love, but also where anger and frustration and all these things come from. But Chinese medicine also teaches us that anger is a result of the heart anyway. You know, if we think about when we're angry, someone cuts us off in traffic and we're like, how dare you? I deserved more respect than that. And it's more like anger is the part that loves you the most because it's trying to protect you from not being treated well. Obviously, we don't want to channel it unhealthy and be destructive, right? Fire can be very destructive, but it's still an emotion through the Chinese lens that represents love, passion. So when you pair that with the horse, it's very momentum, very progress, very let's take action, let's get moving, let's figure out what makes us feel free and exhilarated and alive. But obviously, it's a leap, right? You're seeing, whoa, where we're coming from is surrender. It was aggressive, but it was aggressive surrender, you know? And then this is like passionate progress, momentum, especially in the name of freedom. So we're definitely going to see the political environment around us become even more heated. And that's okay as people are deciding to choose, they want more freedom. We're sick of these negative structures imposing this lack of freedom upon us. And we're really trying to break out of that. But I haven't, with the political or collective environment, I'll just say this. I always am witnessing what's going on, but we have to realize that what manifests on the great scale, what manifests in the external world is a projection of what lives inside of our hearts already. The big storylines can't exist if that hate or that frustration or that anger didn't exist in the hearts of man on the individual level. So when I look at the collective scale, I see the great stage, the performance of what's reflected in the internal individual. So for that reason, I am paying attention and I'm observing, but I'm not getting sucked into the theater of it because the answer to change what happens on the great projected stage is we have to work on ourselves as a collective at the individual level. I don't mean you work on yourself alone, but we have to heal kind of from the grassroots perspective. We have to heal ourselves from the inside at the individual level to change the projection on the great stage. So, I mean, I used to fantasize as a kid about protesting out in the streets and like really trying to be a change maker. And I still kind of like romanticize it a little bit, but I know that it's not necessarily going to be what breaks the chain. Not to say that it shouldn't exist though, because again, it's showing us what lives in the hearts of us as individuals. Anyways, we probably will see the collective environment get more heated as people keep rallying and striving for freedom because we don't live in a society or a world that really encourages freedom. It's an enslavement society. It's basically one giant pyramid scheme. And so, you know, we're going to see people getting really frustrated with that, but that's not what matters. What really matters is how you use that energy. So this is going to be a year where you're going to ask yourself, what has all of these previous years been about? What has this previous saga been shaping me up for? And so it's really about refining the direction that you want to go in. If you're going to be off to the races here, like, well, where are you going? Or you're just going to be running for the sake of running. You're going to be moving for the sake of moving. And it's probably going to feel a little bit more like burnout, a bit more like, you know, when fire goes out of control or when freedom doesn't have a sense, we're just fighting and pushing forward, but we don't even know why. It loses its warm essence and kind of becomes destructive, right? So it's really important that we know what direction we're headed, what our goals are, what we're trying to achieve, because this is a year where you can make a lot of progress towards them because the energy is there to support you. So if you haven't already taken some time to be like, what do I really want? You know, who am I now? And it's sometimes not about perfecting where you're going, but what part of me do I want to explore next? And you might learn that that's not you either. And that's fine. That's the whole point of life. But anyways, big jump. And so the reason that I wanted to talk about this is that this particular topic fits really nicely with that progression of goals, progressions of who you want to be and how to maybe set yourself up for better success. So I don't even know what to call this, but it's essentially mistakes I see people make when trying to achieve a certain goal. And I'm sharing them with you so that you can be aware of them in your own life, right? Lots of these things happen subconsciously. They're happening in our blind spot. And I'm here to show you, hey, these are quite a big list of things I see people do that kind of contributes to not hitting that goal, not achieving that thing. And the reason I'm sharing with you is because I don't want you to fall victim to that. I want you to achieve whatever it is that your soul came here to achieve. And I want you to achieve it in the best, most beautiful possible way, as long as you're here to contribute to the good of the world, not the negative, not the evil. Okay, so here we go. So the first thing was prone to this as well, and sometimes I can still be too, is that whether consciously or unconsciously, you believe that people who have success have had something figured out or had some sort of help that you didn't have, that they have something that you don't have. They took the expensive courses, they had help, they had more money than you to start, they, had supportive people who gave them space and time to create or build that. They have some type of magic essence, they have the look, they're good at social media, all these things where it's like, well, they have this, they have that, I didn't have that, I don't have that. So if anyone's followed my story, that is a huge foundational element of my story. I just felt so normal, and so I did not have any sort of legs up in life. I don't come from money. I don't have anyone in my life who has supported me financially necessarily in this big, robust way. So I could just do the thing. Don't get me wrong. I've been at the rock bottom before, and people have supported me in that sense, but it wasn't this big, I'll just cover all the bills and you can just do whatever you want to do. I haven't had that. And that is the number one thing that I see, because I can recognize it very quickly because I used to think like that, but then also have experienced people pushing that onto me where, they've assumed that things have come easy. They've assumed that, people are, someone else is fronting the bills, my half of the bills. I've had people say things to me like, well, it's because you're pretty or whatever. And it's just like everybody, because of the way that Earth works, there are certain lessons that exist on Earth. And we all have to go through every one of the lessons. And we all are taught by, let's just use Saturn. We all have Saturn as a curriculum teacher. And Saturn does not give anything away for free. He's the Lord of Karma. And he says that you will reap what you sow. So it doesn't matter who you are. Everyone has had to plant the right seeds and till the field to create whatever they created. I know, so I follow someone on Instagram and she made a comment once. She's like, everyone who's ever accomplished some level of financial success or a business has experienced the feeling of tumbleweeds in their bank account somewhere along the journey, but they decided to go anyway. And that's just it. It's this threshold, it's this initiation that everybody has to go through where it doesn't come first day, it doesn't come for free. You have to plant the seed, till the field, and let it sprout. And I think a lot of people with this belief that someone else had it easier, it just begins to fuel all these other beliefs. They all branch out from this belief. And then we give up on ourselves so quickly. But just like a garden, when we're thinking about growing a vineyard and we want to taste the wine, but we have to plant the grapes and get the right environment. We have to wait till the grapes mature. Then we have to learn how to turn the grapes into wine. Everyone's going through that learning process at whatever level they're at. I know people who come from an incredulous amount of money and they struggle through things just the same. Their struggles it's like they're not dealing with not having enough. It doesn't matter who you are or where you come from. You must follow the same protocol, which is you will reap what you will sow. And as long as you're sowing the seeds for the right reason, right? So you're not sowing them because you want to show your neighbor that your grapes are bigger and better. You're not sowing them to prove somebody wrong. You're not sowing them to be validated. If you just really want a fucking orchard and a vineyard and you want to make wine, then if you sow it, it will grow. But that then leads to a lot of that self-development work where we have to actually ask ourselves, like, why am I doing these things? Why am I trying to create that? So literally step one of the whole journey to achieve a goal is that you must be aware of what you desire and making sure that it's actually authentic to you, right? Your soul essence, that's your soul speaking to you. That's what your inner godliness, your inner divinity wants to create. It can't be for these more societal, social expectation reasons, because if you plant seeds for the wrong reasons, it's not going to be the right environment and they're not going to grow the way that you want them to. So that's probably the first step, but we could talk about that all day. That is such a core piece. And I do have a course called Creatrix. And it's literally about that whole process of manifesting, the whole process of getting to the root of who you are. So if you're like, don't even know what you're talking about right now, then that might be something you want to visit. I'll link it in the show notes, or just do your own research. But you can't have, that's the basic foundation. But I don't want to talk about that necessarily today. I do want to talk about the mistakes. But you really won't get anywhere if you don't have the foundation, which is you have to know what you're trying to create, and it has to come from your spirit. So, for example, let's give you one example. A lot of people want money. I just want more money. I just want to travel. I just want to work for myself. I just want money, 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 money. I want money. And I'm not saying that you don't want money, but it's just a tool to get you to what you actually want. So if you're like, I just want to have like 10K in the bank, I'm going to tell you, no, you don't. Your soul doesn't give a shit about money. You don't give a shit about money. It's what money can bring to you. So you have to start asking yourself, why though? Why do I want money? What would I do with that money? Who would I be? And then ask yourself, is that really real to me? Or is it because someone would perceive me in a certain way? Or I could get over this hurtful thing that happened when I was a child. Like, it has to be beyond the why, beyond the why. And it just journal. I'll see if I have any journal exercises kicking around that can help you get there. And I'll also link that. Anyway, that foundation is first and foremost. But it doesn't have to be such that you can't change that over time. Because again, a lot of us learned that what we thought we wanted isn't what we wanted. And that's the process of refinement of revealing our true divinity, is by really going through the process of who am I not and who am I really? And that's a part of the journey. So don't think that you can't refine or change your goals. But anyway, you do need aligned and authentic goals. Anyway, so block number 1 is believing that other people are not bound by the same law of karma that you are, that you must plant the seed, till the soil, and then reap. That you have to go through those processes, and that for some reason it's easier for other people because as maybe fun or glamorous. I don't know if it looks glamorous, but I think it looks very free, the journey that I have. But I just don't necessarily recommend it to anyone unless you are driven by a passion of madness, because it's the only thing that will get you through, because it's not easy. All right. So that's number 1. Number 2 is that whole making things perfect before you launch it. That you invest a ton of time, a ton of money, a ton of resources into whatever it is that you're launching. And then you've really invested so much of yourself into something that hasn't yet invested into you. So actually, the best process to success is that you just start with what's tangible. Like, you don't need to buy a $1,000 website. Just get a social media page started and then let it organically grow. And when you start making momentum and progress from your social media accounts, and you're like, oh, it'd probably be a good idea for me to have a website so people could understand what I'm doing. Then you invest what's invested in you into your business, into your journey, into your goal. And this could apply to things that aren't business related. I can't think of an example, but let's say you want to book a trip you want to book a month vacation in the UK, and you're not someone that comes really easy to. Well, it might be like you just go balls to the wall, you put it all on credit cards, you book it all at once, and you'll just figure it out later. It'll just pay itself back. Well, this is like that over investing right off the start, and then it kind of leaves you in a deficit moving forward. So it would be putting everything on credit cards, overextending yourself before anything's really invested into you first. So this would be like the process forward instead for this 1 month vacation in the UK would be, okay, so I know I want to do this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up the basic skeleton. I'm going to set up like this automatic withdrawal to my savings account. And I'm just going to start with research and planning, figure out where I really want to go, where's the best deal, these types of things. And then we just book things very slowly. We start, we have to delay that gratification. And it's said that in the mystery schools that when you reach the age of maturity, one of the defining factors of, a mature school student, so someone who's really maturing and really kind of advancing their soul, is they can delay gratification, where they can say, I know what my goals are, but I trust the divine timing of it. But this doesn't mean do nothing. And just when you have 10K in your bank account, then you can finally go on the vacation. That's not it. It's the kind of like the flow of life where it comes in and then you expend, and then you have to let this influx come in. So it would be like setting up the foundation to save money. Maybe you're picking up an extra couple of shifts. Maybe you're going to babysit. Maybe you're going to do whatever to just get this ball rolling, but then you're going to put some money in your savings, then you're going to book the Airbnb, then you're going to keep momentuming, then you're going to buy the flights. Momentuming, and it's just an example. But when we kind of money or success in general, everything in general is a flow. So just thinking about breathing, this is what I always say to myself, that breathing is taking a breath, and oxygen is our lifeline. We need it. But we can't actually just keep inhaling. We will die, right? So everything in life, even our literal, the only thing keeping us alive, which is air that we breathe. Well, not the only thing, but if we don't have it, we will definitely die. And very quickly, might I add. You can't just keep intaking. Even though it's your life force and what you need, quote unquote, you can't just only take it in. You have to be rhythmic, and there has to be this outflow to create space to bring more in. And I see a lot of people, they're basically just really, really insecure and nervous to go into the world and say, I'm going to go to the UK for a month. I have to take a bit of a sabbatical from work, or I'm going to launch this podcast or this business, or I'm going to start holding boundaries with my really toxic family members. We're so afraid to just start. And so one of the ways that we gaslight ourselves and decide that we need more information, we need to become more of a pro, we need more courses, we need more therapy, we need to read more books, we need to just keep more, but we actually end up suffocating the dream. Just if we only intake oxygen, we will literally suffocate ourselves. And we'll still die. It has to be this rhythmic flow, or else you suffocate the dream or the goal before you've even given it to the world. And then you also when you finally do exhale and you set the boundary, or you launch the program or the podcast, you exhale, but you have to exhale for so long, and the deficit goes for so long, and then you've robbed yourself of the experience. So it's literally how the universe is set up, that you need to push something out, bring something in, push something out, bring something in, spend a little money, make a little money, put a boundary in. It needs that rhythm, or you suffocate and then you go really into a deficit. And I think we all know that. We all have done something where we've made this, big, huge investment in something, and we wanted to perfect it. We wanted to do all this, and we just went for it. And then it felt like it took extra long for us to recover from it or make the progress. So whatever goal you have, the magic and medicine is in the small steps forward. With people who are wanting to launch a website, wanting to actually invest money, it's better to actually invest in your business after your business has already invested in with you. And I had a mentor, I believe, that said that to me, and I was always, okay, I got you. So when your business starts making money, then you know that it's a feasible or viable business decision to actually reinvest into your business. And so I just see people paying for these coaches, let's say, they're business coaches, and they're here, I'm going to help you create this big program. It's going to be your big launch. It's just too big too quickly. And and then we give up on ourselves too, right? It's not just the laws of the rhythmic universe. It's not just that, right? It's also a big freaking blow to our ego when we've built this thing up and put it on a pedestal for months and months and months. We've invested so much time and so much money, and then we put it out into the world and one person books. Or we go on the UK vacation and it was raining the whole time, and it wasn't this big romantic adventure that you thought it would be, right? That's why it's better to baby step our way into things, because we learn with each step and then we build something stronger, right? There's also this concept that comes through sometimes in sessions when I do for people, where there's two paths, it feels. There's the path literally of the metaphorical tortoise and the hare. And it comes out all the time because mythology is allegory for our reality. And so it's true. You can try to build Rome in one night and rush it and move forward and then go. But then you get distracted or you have setbacks. The tortoise wins because of that consistent movement forward. But the way that they show it to me, it's like building a house of bricks. It's building a kingdom or queendom of bricks. And it's the people who take longer to make sure that the bricks and mortar are set in a way that's structurally sound, because they're taking the time, they're making sure things fit, and then they're building really slowly. But once they arrive to their destination, they are unshakable because it's built so strongly. They've pushed something forward, they've reflected. They've feel the brick felt a little wonky, they pushed that brick out and put one that fit better. And it's like, it's annoying in our instant gratification culture in looking at social media, influencers, and it's like they blew up overnight. But according to our divine guides, there's this other path that it's really fast, but it's built kind of shittily. The bricks don't click. We didn't let the mortar set. We're in the tower and we're like, look at me. I'm so successful. I built this beautiful tower. But then eventually the winds of change come along and that tower isn't able to withstand the winds of change and it's over. It's the 15 minutes of fame versus the legacy. Do you know what I mean? And this applies to everyone because they've basically brought it up again and again and again in people's readings. And I don't know if I've ever really talked about it with anyone, but it's a concept they always give to me. And it's just, there's really two paths, and it's that path or this path. So, don't, and I'm not saying that the people who like really, let's say, invest in, the life coaching and the, brand building and the website building and all these things. Let's say you are one of the people that's invested all this money into something. And you're like, I've made a mistake. That means I'm a failure. My tower is going to fall. That's not necessarily true at all. I'm not saying it's a negative thing. But now, if that's the path that you did start on and you're like, oh shit, well, now it's about not letting the fact that you've invested so much into building this thing and it's not going how you wanted it to. Don't let that be the thing that makes you give up on your tower, makes you give up on your empire. Because it's just, when we put that much in, we're invested. And when it's not successful overnight, we immediately assume that we're a failure. And that's not true. It just means that you're going to you have kind of this bigger exhale before things come back to the inhale, right? We have to exhale a lot longer. So things take a little bit longer to come back around in that rhythmic journey. And then I guess I would just implore you, if you are asking, to revisit the whole thing about the aligned goals, because it's going to be one or two things really. That you are creating things that aren't actually what your soul wants or what you want, and you're kind of deluding yourself, or that you are giving up too quickly, which is what this whole list is for. So then I guess just a perfect time to kind of segue into that is that you are creating things out of some external reason that isn't soulfully aligned. You want to be your own boss. You want your own freedom. You want to be an influencer. You want validation. You want respect. You want attention. You want things to be easy. Because unfortunately, I don't want to say that. I was going to say nothing in life is easy, but it's true. Nothing in life ever comes easy. So for example, I do have quite a high level of freedom. And my friend and I always talk about this. I have a high level of freedom, and she talks about how she's like, oh, I wish I could just do that. I wish I could just have slower mornings like you. But then she hears me talk about how it's so difficult to plan financially. It's so difficult to to essentially plan financially, and then you have the process of like dealing with taxes and retirement and just being able to organize your finances in a way, because it's not consistent being a business owner, right? She gets a paycheck on this day, and it's always the same amount. So she can really create plans, financial plans, because she knows what she's making. I don't have that. And then just honestly, the fear all the time that is never been proven to be true. I mean, I'm on my 7th year of business now. That's crazy. I'm on my 7th year of business now. And I mean, it's never been the case. I've always made it. I've only have better foundation structure, but you still always think that one day there won't be enough, even if there's no evidence that that's true. And that is really toxic to the central nervous system. So what it means is you've kind of glorified something that you're creating or chasing, and it might not be like really exactly what you want. And what your passion isn't clear. What the passion is behind what you're doing, what your desire is behind what you're doing isn't clear. So for example, I guess I'll just use myself. And hopefully, I don't know where I'm going with this example yet, so hopefully it just pans out. When I found the Akashic Records, when I started dabbling in this world, and actually the Akashic Records weren't even step one, when I was the first time hypnotized, and I was able to verify some of the experiences that I saw while hypnotized, my soul came alive, my heart cracked open, and something that I didn't know I was searching for my whole life, it finally made sense to me. I knew that nothing made sense. I knew that there's A plus B does not equal C on Earth, and I could never figure out what it was and what the meaning of this was. And then you start to learn about reincarnation, and then you learn about karma, and you learn about past lives, and that we're here, unraveling the causes that we've created to create new causes that are more beneficial. And everything I'd been confused about my whole entire life up until that moment clicked into place. And I just have to hold a moment for that, because when your entire world feels like this shamble of puzzle pieces and nothing is creating a clear picture, nothing makes sense, and finally one massive event happens in your life that did trigger a domino effect of events that led me to where I am now, you can't unsee that clear picture. And I just wanted to scream it from the rooftops. And honestly, I did. I feel like everyone just was like, okay, enough. We're not struggling with that confusion the way you are. Just shut up, And I still am doing it. And I can't not do it. I can't not see the world like that. I can't not use it as the filter for our entire existence. And I'm extremely passionate about it, to the point where I would be devastated if I spent my life now doing something arbitrary at a desk when I knew that I had this information and I wasn't telling people about it. And I wasn't helping them make sense of their reality and their life and helping them achieve freedom and leaving that enslavement pyramid scheme of a reality that we live in. And I just have that fuel. I have that fire. I know what I want. I know what I care about. I know what I'm passionate about. And so it was a no-brainer for me to take that passion and shout it from the rooftops and make a business out of it, And I think I see a lot of people wanting to be self-employed, but they're not exactly sure what they're passionate about, what they want to talk about. What was that aha moment that cracked you open, right? You're trying to create the freedom in your life. You're trying to, teach or educate or, have a podcast, but you don't know exactly what it is that your foundation is built upon. It's like if you're going to build this queendom and this empire, it's like you have to decide where you're going to lay it first. Before you start laying bricks, figure out where you're going to build the empire. I'm not saying that it doesn't change, but I think a lot of people are trying to build a self-employed journey, trying to build a podcast, trying to build a healing business, and there's not a real solid, you haven't thought about where you're building this. And you're just like, I will lay bricks here. And you're laying bricks here. And you're like, oh, nothing's working because you haven't been decisive or clear on what it is that you're trying to build an empire on. And again, I'm not saying this doesn't change, and I'm aware that I'm struggling with that right now too. How does it tie all together? But it started very clear. So I've built this empire and then I've kind of expanded rooms, and it's like, okay, wait, I need to figure out what's tying all these rooms together. And I can do that. I'm at the place where I'm allowed to be like, oh shit, I've lost the vision for a minute. Or not the vision, but I've lost the clarity of how all the things I'm interested in tie together. But I'm thinking about a lot, and I know it's kind of jailbreaking karmic systems and karma in order to become more free. And when I look at it that way, I know that everything I do does do that, but it's not clear always in my messaging or whatever. So I'm working on it. But that's what I see people sort of struggle with, is like you're trying to build something, but you don't really know what you're building it off of. And I will kind of address a way to manage that. And then this would be like, let's say you're trying to hold boundaries with your toxic family. Okay, let's move it away from work for a second. Well, what I see with that is, and I'm actually guilty of this too, you forget why it's so important that you hold these boundaries with your toxic family member. You forget why it's important that you do this work. You forget why it's important that you push yourself through the discomfort to become who you want to become. And so we have to go back to that why. Why am I building this business? What is the point of this? Why am I trying to hold boundaries with my toxic family members? Why do I want to go to the UK for a month? And if we can't figure out what that foundational why is, everything we build is just going to be lackluster. It doesn't have the spark that it needs to grow. So why are you holding the boundaries with those toxic family members? Because you are not you're losing sleep at night. You are not able to enjoy being connected to your family anymore. You feel stepped on, chewed up, spit out. You're not even well anymore. Maybe you're becoming sick, literally. And you have to go back to that why, because that's the only way you can build the kingdom or the empire, the queendom, is if you know why you're doing it. Because I'm telling you now, it'll never be easy. There's nothing in life that comes for free. There's nothing in life that's easy. Ever since, we ate from the tree of knowledge and the world became a place of sin, we now grow through suffering. And we all do. We all have to get this moment of discomfort that breaks us open so that we can move forward. And we're all on that path in some different way, shape, or form. So if you don't know why you're doing it, the suffering of building the empire is never going to be worth it for you. And you're going to create things that are confusing. You're going to create things that are one step forward, two steps back. You're going to create things that have no charge, no electricity, because your heart and your why isn't in it. Okay. I hope that makes sense. And then I kind of mentioned this already, but I also see people thinking that if you fail at something the first try, that you're not meant to do the thing. And granted, that could be true in some cases. If you revisit all of the things above and you're like, I'm not aligned in my goal and I'm building something because I want to be self-employed, but I don't actually know like why I want to be self-employed or what exactly I want to do. What's going to be worth it for me to be self-employed? What's my passion? What's my why? What's that thing that cracked me open that I would scream from the rooftops about? And so thinking that, so you have to revisit those two things first. Am I creating something aligned? And do I have like a soulfully aligned why I'm doing it? And then after that, if you can say, yeah, I'm pretty sure I might not be perfect on it. I might refine this through time, but like, this is me. I'm not doing this for external validation. And I know why I'm doing it. I know why it matters. Maybe you have a child and you want to show your child that you do not have to just like slave away from someone else. You want to show people how empowered it is to like go your own path, whatever your why is. So you've checked those boxes, might not be perfect, but you've actually thought about it and you're like, yeah, for sure. And then you put the offering out into the world and it doesn't succeed on the first try. I see a lot of people give up after the first launch and it was crickets. I see a lot of people give up when they've made this offering to the world and they've created the Instagram account and it didn't have 5,000 followers overnight. I see a lot of people give up when it's not an instant success or when you don't have a sold out offering or you don't have 23 likes on your post, only one person liked it. I see a lot of people give up at that first failure. And it's not always the case. If you look at a ton of successful people, they'll actually tell you the story in which they went through so many failures, so many rejections, but they were that passionate about what they were doing that they just kept going anyway. And I think that's the real testament to success. And it also shows you like just how passionate you really are about that thing because you went through a door slammed in your face here, a financial loss here. I'm not necessarily encouraging that because again, failure can sometimes signify that you're out of alignment, right? That you're not in alignment. But at the same time, I do believe that all successful people go through enough doors being shut in their face first. And they just like, no, I would die if I didn't do this. I'm going to keep doing it anyway. And that shows you their passion and alignment. And then at that moment, that's when things start to take off. So I'm pretty sure the person who created Honda cars went through a massive, awful loss. The guy who invented Sriracha went through a massive, awful loss. And honestly, so did I. First of all, I started my business literally 8 months before the pandemic. And it was a blessing at the beginning, but it became a bit of a curse after. And I went through this mental breakdown and I went into this big spiral of depression and I just hit a rock bottom. And I had to ask myself, like, what am I doing? If I can't even manage myself, how am I supposed to be doing sessions for other people? And it was just a really tough year, but I had to make this decision. I can go out and get another job. I can let this go or whatever hours I would have put into a different job, I invest back into my company and see what happens. Like everyone I know who has any level of success, it usually comes hard earned. I just listened to a podcast episode and this woman is like a multimillionaire. She did have like decent foundations growing up, but she went through this it was like the recession in America. I don't remember when that was. And she lost everything. So she went from owning a house and having a lot of money and all of a sudden losing her job and hitting rock bottom. She had to move back in with her parents at 9 and now she's a fucking millionaire. And it's because that breaking moment sometimes is what does refine where you're going. So in her moment of being really down in the dumps, she ended up learning, she recovered. A lot of people lost their jobs and moved back to their parents. And a lot of people started noticing like, hey, she's recovering a lot faster than us. She must know some things about money that we don't know. And now her whole business, her multi-million-dollar business is teaching people how to be good with money. And so she was like I think a preschool teacher before that. And so she's like, oh, I'm going to take this teaching that I was so passionate about, but I'm going to teach people about something that I'm really good at. And so it's her destiny became refined based upon the suffering, right? And, with me, when I was in my rock bottom, that was so hard for me. I was just in such a terrible place. And I think anyone would have given up. And when I came out the other side of that, because I was in such a dark place, I needed to do things differently to get myself out of that place. And when I came out of it, actually one of my favorite courses was born, which is Walk on the Wild Side. That was where that course was born. And it's my favorite, well, one of my favorite things I do. And it's definitely one of the most powerful things I do. And I don't know if I ever would have found that magic or that depth into what I was doing without that dark moment. So don't always take your failures. Like sometimes failure can signify misalignment, but also failure can really signify a way to pivot and refine. And it also gives you experience so that you're not just teaching or working from a place of like theory. You actually are like, okay, I know what it's like to go to Hades and back, and let's use that depth and life experience to add to my work, to add that depth to my work as well. So the first failure doesn't mean that doesn't always mean you're out of alignment. Sometimes it's just testing how much you believe in yourself. And that is a for sure thing. In Creatrix, we talk about that too. The little challenges that the universe gives us to really see, like, do you really believe in yourself? Because the universe can only meet us where we really are. And so sometimes it will give us these failures or these challenges in order to test how much we believe in ourselves. And if we continue to believe in ourselves, they go, all right, that's the self-worth we were looking for, and then it's like our Grinch heart grows 2 sizes, and then our business then grows 2 sizes, or our dreams or our ambitions or whatever it is. I also see a ton of people engaging in magical thinking, which kind of ties into some of the other sabotages, where you're so aligned, and this is your destiny through and through, that when you launch your social media account, within 6 months, you're going to have 50,000 followers. You're going to be an influencer level. And this goes back to that tortoise and the hare thing. It's like, maybe that'll happen to you. But I mean, at the same time, does that mean you're on the hare journey and when the winds of change come, everything's going to fall? I'm starting to, based upon what my Hear Spirit talking about, I'm like, well, shit, I want to be on the tortoise journey, because at least everything I built is not going to fall apart in, when the winds of change hit. So magical thinking. And so we are prone to magical thinking and thinking that we make the one offer and it's going to be sold out, that we post the 10 posts and we're going to be viral overnight, that we can invest, $10,000 into a branding coach, and that's going to be so aligned for us that it's going to pay itself back right away. And it usually doesn't work out like that, because again, we're under the law of Saturn, under the law of karma, which you have to plant the seed, till the field, and then sow it. So there is no overnight success. There's no selling things out. Like even to this day, so I'm trying to think, like with Walk on the Wild Side, it does typically sell out, but this year it didn't. And I'm honestly like, okay, that doesn't mean that my potent offering is any less. And honestly, it was a weird blessing in disguise, because I'm teaching another course simultaneously, because it's longer, it's 6 months. And I was like kind of scared about how I was going to be able to manage both things. So maybe it was a gift I didn't know that I needed, right? And so this external validation, where it's like, if it doesn't work out right away, that means I'm not good. It means I'm misaligned. It means it's not my destiny. And then also this magical thinking that it's just eventually going to work itself out. In my experience, I used to engage in magical thinking around like paying my credit card off. Like, especially when I first started my business, I was like, oh, like, I'll get to I'll eventually, 10 people will sign up in my $1,000 course, and I'll have $10,000 in my pocket, and I'll just like put half that on my credit card, and there it is, gone. It'll be great. Well, life never allows you to skip corners, especially not if you have heavy Saturn placements. I have heavy Saturn. I'm just fucked. Everything I do, I will have to work really hard for. But it doesn't mean, even if you don't have Saturn placements, that he's not out there watching you. He's always affecting all of us in some way, shape, or form. So that's literally never going to happen for me, because I'm not saying that I couldn't have this big influx of money that would clear off my credit. What would happen is that it's not going to happen until I learn to address it and till the field. And this happens with every aspect of our life. So whether it's finances, whether it's boundaries, whether it's relationships, whether it's starting a business, a podcast, you've got to till the fields. You've got to plant the seed. You've got to nurture it. And nothing magical will ever come and just remedy that problem out of your life. So, for example, let's say again, the boundaries thing, and you're really struggling with putting boundaries. Well, it might be really worth it to, I don't know, I'll give you the way I sort out things, but I'll tell you an alternate perspective as well. So, you have to become kind of an expert at that thing. If you don't know what boundaries are and how to hold them, listen to a bunch of podcasts on boundaries, read some books on boundaries, talk to your friends about boundaries, talk to your therapist about boundaries, or if you are not good with money, this credit card that was looming over me, it was like I had to learn how to handle adult money and deal with credits and just like pay it back instead of just paying the minimums and thinking that, oh, like it'll just pay itself off one day. You had to like actually look at these things. And that's the whole process of succeeding in anything, or if you're, starting this business and it's just not gaining the momentum, well, you might do well pressed to talk to people who are actually versed in sales and marketing and business structure. And I know sometimes that stuff really sucks and it's super boring, but we can't just create something and do something without really knowing anything about it, or if you're podcasting and you're like, oh, my podcast has 2 listens, and you want to move it along. Again, there's the whole alignment thing. Are you talking about things you're really passionate about? Do you have this core thing that you're working on, this core message? But then it's like, okay, well, you could do some market research about the podcasting, what's the new strategy for podcasting? What are good ways of writing? How do you captivate audiences? How do you scale a podcast? And we just do these things. And I'm guilty of this too sometimes with certain things where it's alignment will set me free. Alignment, if I'm doing my soul's work, it'll just work out. But it's happened enough times where it's like, yeah, I'm in alignment, but I'm also kind of really uneducated on the subject matter of credit or on the subject matter of, writing with a voice and a message about honing everything into one. I need to learn these things. I need to learn these things because knowledge is power. And a lot of times we become really afraid of what we don't understand. And then we just throw it in the trash because we're like, I'm uncomfortable. Just take the course, listen to the podcast, listen to the books. And I think it is super important to do those things. If you look at anyone who's successful, even if it's not in the spiritual community, if you actually look at even celebrities, maybe not the ones who are really, really mainstream, but people who are maybe self-made success, you'll see how often they're working on themselves. They're learning, they're educating themselves because they want where they're going so bad that they're not just like on a hope and a prayer. They're not just magical thinking. It's my destiny. I'm going to acting lessons. I took really harsh criticism from my music teacher. I got rejected 107 times and I kept showing up for those auditions. I just see people thinking that it's magic that people succeed, but it's actually, no matter what field you're in, it's actually consistent effort and progress. And what fuels that is that desire, is that dream, is that you really want it. So if you're like someone who's just giving up before you even get started, well, it's probably good to ask yourself, well, do I really want this? Or do I just think I want this? Okay. And then in part and parcel with that, you give up when things get uncomfortable. Instead of walking through the discomfort of actually holding the boundary, of actually looking at your finances, of actually taking, and when I say study things, it's obviously you could take a course, but sometimes it just requires like reading a book, listening to some podcasts until you can find the person that might be aligned and they have a $200 course on how to streamline your finances or whatever. It's not about always paying more and getting the best. It's about the small things that you do to progress yourself often have bigger outcomes than going big and going home. That's the whole oxygen thing. So it's the inflow, the outflow, right? The smaller steps change your life. I'll tell you that now. It's the little things you do differently, the little things you do to advance yourself, as long as you're doing it with intention. That's where progress is made. Okay. The final one, and honestly, this might be one of the most important ones, is that you're creating things and saying things and doing things based on what you think people want to hear. So I'll talk about it from this career-based perspective, and I'll talk about it from, other goals and visions. So let's say you want to be a podcaster. And I've kind of disclosed that I don't want to talk about some of the taboo things all the time, but I will create a podcast based on what I think. You would create a podcast based on what you think your listeners want to hear. Or you create social media that you think people will listen to, that it has clickbait, or rage bait, or it's like trending topic and you're like, oh, just jump on this trend. And we'll start curating our life based on who's perceiving it and receiving it. And I guarantee you that will never lead you to anything positive in the end. We have to create. So again, we're these creative beings. We're creating our life based on our internal soul divinity. And so when we start curating what we are to the person witnessing the art, the person, it's all over. Right? It's not our art anymore. It's for the other person. And your life, regardless of what you're doing, even if you want to help people, it's still about you creating your life. So you have to create it from the heart out. That you can't be super worried about what the receiver is going to interpret from it. You just have to create it. So sometimes we'll over explain, we will link down, we will edit, this is like trending, but it's not really you. It's not really your art. It doesn't excite you. You don't want to read it. You don't want to watch it. You're doing it for the consumer. And if you're doing it for the consumer, you'll kill your dream real quick and it won't be fun to you anymore. You won't enjoy it. And honestly, you will set yourself up for success before you even start. Or you make posts people will think will like, you say things you think people want to hear about when it's not even your thing. You don't even care about that. You're just like, well, spiritual people know about this, so I'll talk about it. So for example, I could have been like, oh, I know all about the astrology transits that are lining up with this new year and this year of the horse. But honestly, I don't know about the transits. I'm doing something completely different, but I know about the numerology and I know about the Chinese New Year. And I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, there's a lunar eclipse in Aquarius this week, because I'm not looking at that. I don't have to pretend to be the expert on that because people love astrology. I am not looking at that right now. I'm looking at different things. I'm not going to embellish that I'm the expert on that because frankly, I'm not looking at it right now. So we think we have to talk about these things because it's spiritual or woo-woo, but it's not our thing. We don't. Just stay away from catering to the consumer. And I have a great resource for that. But you have to create art for you, and look to actual successful artists and follow their blueprint because your life is art. Whether you're holding a boundary, whether you want to spend a month in Europe, whether you want to create a podcast or start a business or become self-employed or have a, bang and savings account, whatever it is that you're doing, you have to make it look your art. Your life is your art and you're creating it. So create something that you want to look at, that you think is beautiful, that you love, that moves something in your own soul, because that's what other artists are doing. And it just also happens to resonate with the masses. So, thinking about your favorite song, it depends on who you listen to. When we get too mass produced, I think there's a bit of an agenda there to keep people stupid and like to show people what normal is. And it's actually like debauchery. Like nobody's doing these things except for people that are susceptible to the music or the influencer. But when you think about like your actual favorite song or your actual favorite poet or artist, what they're creating is something from their own story. And it was probably a painful, deep thing. And we look at it and they didn't make it for us. They made it because it healed or represented something within them. And then we look at it and it heals us a little bit too, because we shared that moment with them. And I think a little bit about Noah Kahan, because his whatever emotions live inside of him, I feel they live inside of me too. And I'm not unique in that thought because he's very successful now. He's writing from this really emotional place, this really painful and frustrated place. Like he says things in his songs that I've thought out loud or thought, how did he say that thing that I've been feeling my whole life so well? Or the poet, or you look at a piece of artwork and you're like, whoa, that is moving. And it's because your inner world is speaking to their inner world and we bond over that experience. So if you're trying to be mass appeal, you've stolen the essence from what you're creating that people will actually resonate with. So I could really take a line out of that book with this podcast because I sometimes feel like I do tamp it down. And honestly, there was a podcast I did a few episodes ago. I don't remember what episode it was now, number wise, but it was the one where I told my story. And I say in the beginning of that podcast that was really uncomfortable for me, more uncomfortable than I thought it was going to be. And every day of my life, I hear people say that that's their favorite episode. And it's because what lives inside of me lives inside of some of those listeners in some way, shape, or form, and they draw a parallel and they want to hear more. So when you're doing anything, do it from your heart and make it something that you love, that speaks to you, that tells your story, whether it's a post on social media, whether it's your artwork, whether it's that boundary that you're holding. Just speak from your heart and say no because that's what's true to you, you know? Or if you're going to the UK, do it not for the social media glam, do it because you want that rainy romantic part of your story. You want that rainy romantic part of your story. And yeah, don't do it for others. Okay, so the recommendations, so just to summarize, we looked through all these points, all these things that lead to sabotage on any type of goal that we have. And then the medicine is going to be doing the opposite of those things. But a couple other recommendations that I have to get you started. And the first one is actually going to speak to that artistry. There's a book written by Rick Rubin, and it is called The Creative Act. And that book healed so much in the way that I curate things. Honestly, I think I need to go back and reread it because I was reading it and I was reading it very quickly because it's not a whole book. It's anecdotes, it's little poems, it's little tidbits of advice. It's not written like a traditional book because he is an artist and he does it his way. But anyway, it's this book of this collection of this music producer, Rick Rubin, and what he's noticed about successful artists and successful creatives. The lesson applies not only to like a musician or a poet or a writer, it applies to everyone at every time of their life, especially if you're a content creator or you have a business. And some of the things he says in there changed my life and the way that I operate and work like entirely. And I think there's one line, and it was, "You're not responsible for how people perceive your art." And I realized when I read that, I try to over explain what I do all the time. I over explain what the Akashic records are. I over explain what I do. I over explain in my social media posts. I write too much, but it's always this fear of being misunderstood or misperceived. Actually, you're right. I just am who I am. This is my path and I'm not giving up now. So like how you perceive me doesn't matter to me. And then I thought, because I'm a huge music lover, I thought about, a ton of songs that mean something to me, but I actually don't know what the artist was really writing about. And sometimes you'll hear that. You'll hear someone, "Oh, I wrote this story, this song about this." And you're like, "Whoa, I was applying it to a completely different part of my life. And now I don't even like that song anymore." One song that comes to my mind is "Take Me to Church" by Hosier. So that, not for me. I knew what the song was about, but he's talking about love and like duality and leisure and like worshiping a woman in this very poetic way that he's comparing it to church. And at the time I had a friend who'd listened to it and she was very religious and she'd always sing it like, "Take me to church." And it was like this very religious experience for her. And then after listening to it a few times, she's like, "I don't think he's singing about church." No, he's not. He's talking about almost the exact anthem of church, I think. But anyways, so we're not responsible for how people perceive our work, and I think that will heal more. It'll heal you a lot more in a lot of different ways than you even imagine. So highly recommend that book. Just in general, it'll just make you care a lot fucking less about how other people see you or feel you or perceive you, and realize that your life is your life to create. And it'll make you want to hold those boundaries. It'll make you put that trip to the UK on the priority list, and it'll definitely help you refine your work if you're a creator of any kind. So the other thing I'd like to say is that do what you love. Do it because you love it. Do it because you're obsessed with it. Do it because it changed your life, and let that be a leading message. Let your passion be the first and foremost thing that people see. Talk about the time that you learned about the Akashic records or Reiki, or about the thing in your life that cracked you open, because people will find that parallel within you. And then sometimes if you're like, "Oh, I don't even know what that is. What is my thing?" A really great key is for anything. This isn't just your work. This is the boundaries. This is the UK trip. What did a younger version of you need? Be that person. Hold the boundary for your younger self because she got railroaded every day. Go to the UK and live that dream for a month because the younger you was not allowed to dream that big. And if you're a service provider or a content creator of any kind, it's like your dream clients to start with need to be a past version of you. And you need to figure out where in your story did you heal a part of yourself, and how can you guide other people through that story. That'll give you more medicine than you can even imagine. And then just be okay with refining things. Be okay with learning from failures, learning from flops, learning from deficits, learning from things, and let it refine you. Be okay not with being the chameleon and trying to figure out how you can be what people want. Just learn that you can refine things that don't work. You can find a way to make them work by, reaching out for a collaboration, being on a podcast, going to an organization and offering your services there versus trying to generate anything on social media. Sometimes everybody has their different niche and place. Maybe you need to rent a room at a space because then you can cross promote with each other. Just think outside the box, be okay with refining, try different ways. If it's your passion, it is the path for you, but you're just going about it in kind of probably a lack mentality type of way. And then honestly, just let go, be yourself, and just be okay with growing, learning as you go, exploring refinement, and just like let go of the outcome. It's actually a comedian. His name is Tom Segura. Very funny. He has a line in one of his shows that he's like, I hate people who crush other people's dreams by saying, oh, you can't do that. You can't go here. You can't be this. And he said, the one thing about dreamers is that, I'm paraphrasing, is that as long as you know what your dream is and you're okay with it coming to you in different ways than what you imagine, then keep going for it. Because your dream is your dream. But how you get it, sometimes you need to be open to pivoting to different ways. And I mean, for me, a lot of my work does come from social media and it does come from word of mouth, but it didn't start that way. I can't even imagine trying to build a business on social media from ground one. So if you look at me now, oh, she built it from ground one on social media. I did not. I built it by collaborating. I built it by originally having a space where other practitioners were, and I could cross promote with their clients. And then I built it through, collaboration. I built it through meeting a woman who saw something in me, and she then, introduced me to all of her family, and then word of mouth kind of spread and spread and spread. She invited me to events. And honestly, if you're trying to build a business from ground zero on social media, I just am not sure. I mean, some people obviously do it, but I think you have to be open to exploring other avenues and maybe allowing social media, because it's not, for me anyway, it's not the place I get my primary guests, my primary clients. A lot of it comes from collaboration for me. So think outside the box and do not let social media be the barometer of your success, because social media is designed to promote things that push a narrative, and it does kind of hide some of the spiritual stuff. So anyways, I digress. The world isn't what you think it is, especially if you're looking and comparing yourself to others, and especially if you're doing it on social media. My God. So there you have it.